part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Chase Smith, founder and CEO of Press Play Podcast. You may have heard me on the Orange is Oranger Cleveland Browns podcast with Jeremy Powell, now wonderfully hosted by Holly Wetzel, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast with Sam Amico, or my own podcast, the Chase Smith Podcast. I wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about a brand new subscription-based podcast we're offering this football season, the Press Play Sports Podcast. This premium podcast feed will send all of the sports podcasts offered on the Press Play Podcast Network to one central feed. Yes, you can still follow and subscribe to all of our individual shows for free on every podcast platform. But if you wanted to consolidate your podcast feed and listen to them all in one location, the Press Play Sports Podcast is for you. I'm talking the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast with Holly Wetzel and Jeremy Powell, Greg and Rhoda, Sabol Brothers on the baseline, Cavs on the Break, the Dennis Maniloff Show, the Ball Card Show, the Premium Fantasy Podcast, a Swing and a Tribe MLB podcast, and the Tim and Shipe Show, a college football podcast, all in one feed. All 9 of our sports shows curated into one single podcast feed. Out the door, you're looking at $5.36 a month after tax. That's $5.36, just about the cost of a drink at Starbucks. And this is only offered on Apple Podcasts. You can't get this anywhere else. It's an Apple Podcast exclusive. Just go to the search bar and search Press Play Sports. It'll come up and you can subscribe from there. We're excited to offer this consolidated, curated sports feed for you to enjoy. And as always, thank you so much for listening and your support.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. We're your hosts. I'm John Sabol.
And I'm Scott Sabol. We both sound alike, so we had to have to separate this. Yeah. We sound like Dad too, but that's beside the point. But go ahead, John.
Yeah, and you know, no one knows what Dad sounds like, but
that's true because he hasn't been on the show. Should we get Dad on the show?
Ooh, that sounds like a good topic for a show. We could talk to Dad about anything.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. But anyway,
maybe that I'm the better athlete of the brothers.
Well, let's not get into that because we have another guest later on in the winter. I don't want to spoil it, but I have a few things we got to talk about off mic about that. But go ahead.
Sounds good. All right. So you guys, thank you for joining us, by the way. And you can connect with us here on social media at John_Sabol. That's my Twitter, at ScottFOX8. That's his Twitter, and at Sabol Brothers. That's our Twitter handle as well. Talking about athletes and being the better athlete, our guest for this episode is a better athlete than you and I combined, plus some, Scott.
Correct. Yeah, he's this guest here. This running back has probably forgot more about football than we'll ever know in a lifetime.
I mean, this guy is just tremendous. Way before my time, never saw him played before I was born, but definitely heard from him, from you, from Dad, and from other, members of the Cleveland Browns fan base. And of course, just looking up online and watching highlights on the old YouTube.
Absolutely. And this guest is none other than Greg Pruitt. You remember Greg Pruitt back in the 70s into the early 80s. And we're going to talk with him about we're going to talk with him about a whole bunch of stuff. I think it's going to be really fun because I've talked with him off mic, off camera before, and he's got a lot of great stories. I'm really looking forward to this one. Yeah,
we're going to go football. We're going to talk a little bit of fishing and hunting as well, reminisce of the old stadium and a lot more. This is a really cool interview, and I'm glad we got to have Greg on.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk with Greg Pruitt right after this.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Orange is Oranger Browns podcast.
Hi, Hi, this is Maria Gincola with Mindful MMJ Ohio. Did you know that medical marijuana has been legal in Ohio since 2016? If you have one of 25 qualifying medical conditions, you can obtain your medical marijuana card today. The most common conditions are chronic pain, including migraines and back or joint pain, PTSD, fibromyalgia, spinal cord disease or injury, and cancer. If you or someone you know is interested in learning more or to find out if you qualify, visit mindfulmmjohio.com and fill out the short pre-qualification form. The process of finding a physician, filling out paperwork, obtaining medical records, and scheduling an appointment seems like it would be a daunting process for most. But, lucky for you, Mindful MMJ Ohio will help you every step of the way to make the process quick and easy. In most cases, we can approve a qualified patient within 24 hours. And the visit is virtual, so you don't even have to leave home. So what are you waiting for? Visit mindfulmmjohio.com today. That's mindfulmmjohio.com. Let us help you be more mindful of your health and find a natural way to find relief from your symptoms.
Welcome back to the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. Well, our guest, if you're a big Browns fan going way back, doesn't really require an introduction, but if you're a younger fan, we're going to rattle off some of this guest's his accolades here. Running back from the Browns from 1973 to 1984, 5 Pro Bowls, and yes, a kick returner, which we'll get to coming up later on. Came in second in the Heisman Trophy voting in 1972. Former Browns great Greg Pruitt is our guest today. Greg, it's great to hear from you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So, Greg, what are you up to? What do you do for fun these days? This is a question we ask everybody because of COVID. You know, COVID's been kind of on everyone's mind, but, you know, we're getting out. We're trying to enjoy the nice weather. How about yourself? What are you up to? What do you do for fun?
Well, I had a construction business. I retired from it, and my son kind of took over. And I always joke with folks and say, if you ask me, what do? I say, I fish, play golf, and I hunt. If you ask my friends, they'll say, I fish, I play golf, and I sleep in the woods.
That's great.
Greg, just curious, what do you hunt?
Deer. My favorite is turkey. And because normally when you hunt, you go in the woods, you know, and wake up with the woods, and you go to areas that people tell you, oh, that's where they're at. And you hope they come and you see them. And most of the time you never do.
Yep.
But turkeys, you don't see them, but you call them and they call back. Mm-hmm. So you know they're there. So that's when it gets exciting.
The reason why I ask is I just got back yesterday from my annual fall duck hunting trip up in northern Michigan with my brother-in-law.
Oh, okay.
And I've been going up there with him for about 8 years.
We'll have to do that. I like that. I actually go pheasant hunting up near in Port Clinton.
Okay. Yeah, I would love that. Love to take you duck hunting. It's great. Yeah. We've been going since 2013, and you know he's a big deer and duck hunter and big fisherman. He owns his own tackle company, and we've gone deer hunting before. I did go turkey hunting once when I lived and worked in West Virginia, and man, we called turkeys for about 7 hours and stuck in a turkey blind. They never came.
Never showed up. Well, I tell you, one of the times I went, I always took a guy that's really a great turkey call. I mean, you would think you was a turkey that good. And so we had set up an outing to go, and on my way to the location, he called me and told me he had an emergency come up and he wasn't going to be able to make it. I said, oh man, I can't call turkeys. I probably won't get a turkey. So I got this little store-bought turkey call. So I said, I went, I set up, and I hit this little turkey caller. So I hit it once and I heard a gobble back. I said, you got to be kidding me. I called the turkey and got my turkey on my own. So I've been hooked ever since.
It's fun. I've been trying to get Scott to go duck hunting with me ever since I went. We just haven't been able to make it work.
You should go, Scott. So you got dogs to go retrieve them?
Well, we have when it depends with his buddies. If his buddies have a dog, they'll retrieve them, or we just go out and wearing waders or go in a canoe and grab them ourselves. And we had 23 ducks on the first day, none on the second, and none on the third. But we got some mallards and some wood ducks, and man, there's some great eating. Let me tell you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's get back into some football, shall we?
Okay.
Where did you grow up, Greg? And did you play other sports besides football?
I played every other sport. they canceled practice one day, and I didn't know what you do after school if you wasn't playing basketball, football, running track, or baseball. I did all of those sports in high school.
Yeah, usually we like to hear that with people. I mean, too many kids nowadays, I think, just focus on one sport. So like Scott alluded to in the introduction, you played your college football at Oklahoma. And I was looking up some stats, Greg, and you're currently ranked still third in all-purpose yards with the Sooners. That's impressive. You played there 3 years before being drafted by the Browns. We'll get in the draft in just a moment. But I was looking this up, and I had no idea, but you were on the cover of Sports Illustrated in an October issue in 1972, and SI labeled you as the, quote, the unlimited talent.
Yeah.
What was it like to grace the cover of SI at 21? And how many copies of that do you still have?
Well, I got a copy, one copy. I thought here recently, I just turned 70. And I can't believe I'm 70. And but all indications, I'm all of a sudden getting a lot of fan mail with cards and Sports Illustrated covers and with my signature. And I'm saying, do they know something I don't know? They trying to get my signature before it's too late. But I love getting that kind of mail and signing and sending it back, because I see things that I didn't even know exist until somebody sent it to me.
Like what? What's one thing that you didn't think existed?
Sports Illustrated. I've been on just about every sports magazine you can they got out there. Sports Illustrated, you name it.
And that was really before, sports memorabilia became what it is today. Right. People, you hear stories about people throwing stuff out and wishing they still had it.
They send me jerseys. They send me towels. They send everything. And then they have, and I really like now, they'll ask me questions, like what's the greatest moment in your career, and, and we relive that. A guy asked me about what was my greatest moment in pro football. And pro football was the first year I rushed for 1,000 yards. We had three games left in the season. I was close enough, like 200 yards or something from 1,000. But I only had one game left at home to get it done. And we played against Kansas City. I ended up getting 214 yards. Wow. And I got a standing ovation, which is what I expected, and I was not surprised at all. That's one of my greatest moments as a Cleveland Brown player.
Do you still have your original copy of that SI cover in 72?
I don't know if it's the original, but I have one.
Very cool. I always like to know those little things,
Mm-hmm.
I love looking at it. I know our listeners can't see this, but on the Zoom call here, we see behind you. I mean, you have stuff framed. I love the man cave in your basement. You got stuff from obviously your playing career and some jerseys in the background. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, I have some of mine. I have a Jim Brown jersey, a Leroy Kelly, a Marcus Allen. I have all those guys. I didn't win the Heisman, but I won just about all the other trophies we could win. I thought that I should have won it, but I didn't. But even to be in the final of it is amazing to me.
So, Greg, real quick here, who dusts all that stuff? Because my stuff in the basement.
Me, you're looking at it.
Oh, you're okay. Good.
Hey, some of the trophies, Doc, I give you a tip. Some of the smaller things, you just put them in your dishwasher.
Oh, really?
Keep them clean. Yes.
What do you put in the dishwasher that's sitting right there?
Some of the trophies got glass bases. I got trophies with the glass base. You put them in, they come out like brand new.
Oh man, that's awesome.
I'm not going to tell my wife that, because then she's going to throw all my stuff in the dishwasher and then it's not going to come out right. So Greg, the Browns drafted you in the second round. You were the 30th pick, but you only weighed 177 pounds. Is that right?
Well, actually, I weighed 172 pounds because I hit a 5-pound weight up under a towel. When we came up for media day, when I introduced all the picks to the fans, they made you strip down. We wore we put a towel around us, and so I had a 5-pound weight on the screen. I weighed 177 pounds.
So do you think that was the reason why your draft stock fell to 30th in the second round, because of your weight, or did that not play a role? What do you think?
Well, I was disappointed, in that size was always an issue for me. All through my career, I just never passed the eye test, I guess, to a lot of the coaches. But I was disappointed because my college coach, Chuck Fairbanks, got the head coaching job for New England. I just played for him for 3 years, and he knew if I was big enough. He could answer that better than anybody. So he had 3 first-round picks. So I just knew I was going to New England because I knew that was the only question mark that was out there. Well, he took Sam the Bam Cunningham. I'm trying to think of the tackle from Alabama. He was good for a long time. And a receiver, I can't think of his name. He got paralyzed. He was paralyzed, the one that got hit by Jack Taylor.
Okay.
But anyway, I thought I was gonna be a first round pick. I was a journalism major, so I had access to what came over the line. I had already planned this party. I was waiting for it to be official. And I had just started playing golf, Scott. I didn't really like golf, but I found out on that day the back nine was a great place to hide. Because after the first round went and gone, I didn't know what round I was going to go in, and I didn't want to face the music. So some reporter, he found me and told me I had just been drafted by the Cleveland Browns. And I mean, I can't tell you how I felt after I heard that. Wow, I was excited about that.
So I just hear you were a journalism major. So let's go back, to the early 70s. Let's say football disappeared on right before the draft. And was journalism something you really wanted to pursue? I mean, let's say football didn't work out.
No, actually, I was a business major, but I couldn't pass some of the math that was a requirement.
Oh, okay.
So then journalism was a course that I could see I could pass and get a degree in.
Yeah, it's funny. The ongoing joke within journalists and broadcasters, with the exception of Scott, because he's a meteorologist, but me as a sports anchor and reporter and everything, we took journalism because we can't do math.
That's true.
Yeah, people that write aren't great at math typically, but unlike Scott, who's great in both.
Right.
So Greg, the Browns have a rich history of running backs. Jim Brown, yourself, Marion Motley, Leroy Kelly, Ernest Biner, Derek Metcalf, now Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. The list goes on and on.
Right.
When you were drafted, did you feel any of pressure or anything of following in the footsteps of guys like Brown and Motley, people like that? Did you feel any pressure as a player like that, as a young kid coming out of college?
Well, the only guy that I had heard a lot about was Jim Brown. And as kids, we watched TV and we saw a lot of Browns games. And I remember watching Jim Brown. The Browns played the Giants, and that was a play. Jim Brown ran a sweep to the right, and everybody thought he was going out of bounds. And he got to the sideline. He planted his foot, dropped his shoulder, and he ran over the defensive back that came up, ran over another guy, and went for a touchdown. We just got all excited about that. And after the game was over, everybody went out. Everybody wanted to be Jim Brown, so we pulled straws. And I had a friend named Charles Law. He won the straw, and so he was going to be Jim Brown. So we go out and we play, and we're playing tackle. And he's running a sweep. He has a touchdown. And you can see him slow down and try to reenact what we had just saw on TV. 3 guys hit him. We broke 2 legs and an arm. So all these years later, I get to play golf with Jim, played a lot of golf. And so I was asking Jim on one of those occasions, how did it feel for so many people to know him? And people always talking about Jim Brown. And he was saying, well, it feels good. So then I told him, I said, I know one guy don't like you at all, Jim. And he said, well, what you mean? And I told him the story. I said, this guy, got the stroke, got two legs and an arm broken. He don't like you at all. And he looked at me, he said, He said, that shows you one thing. I said, what? April 1 Jim Brown.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Only one Jim Brown, man.
Yeah.
I think he gets lost in the greatest of all time player conversation nowadays because of what Tom Brady has done. I know we're all biased, being Browns fans and a good friend as you are to Jim Brown. So during those 70s, pretty lean years for your Browns back then, Greg, in your 9 years with the Browns, 4 winning records, 1 playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember most about those teams, despite maybe the amount of wins that you would have loved?
Well, my favorite team was the Kardiac Kids. And, you know, when I was at Oklahoma, we had a lot of confidence in ourselves as a team. We never felt pressure when we played other teams that were as good. We thought the games would be close, but we thought ultimately we would win those games. And I never had that feel again in the first couple of years with the Browns. And then Kardiac Kid years came, and that came back. We didn't know how we would win the game, but we knew we would win the game. We didn't know who would make a play to win the game, but we were going to win the game. And so we actually put pressure on the defense because most of the defensive guys would come in prior to the game and say, y'all ain't coming back on us. We beat y'all and all that. But we always did. So that was one of my favorite games. It didn't end the way I wanted it to. I was upset that we lost the game we lost because in the end, a field goal would have gave us a chance to beat the Raiders. And we were like on the, I want to say the 15-yard line, 13-yard line, and a field goal was enough to win that game. And we went for it one more time, and they intercepted the ball, and you know we never got there. But I think if we got, and in fact, that team that because we did what we did and got a victory out of it, went on to win a Super Bowl. The Raiders, they were the first wild card team to go on to win a Super Bowl.
So, Greg, early on in your career, you start out in the early mid-'70s. You went through a couple of coaches with the Browns, and then Sam Rutigliano, you know, who for me, at my age, he was the first coach that I remember as a little kid. Tell us about Sam. You know, he's still around. You know, we see him on commercials. He seems like a great guy. Tell us a little bit about him as a coach.
Well, I think, you know, when I first came to the Browns, it was Nick Scorich. I wasn't a part of the Browns list of draftees. I heard that Art Modell stepped in and told the Browns to draft me. So I didn't come in as somebody that they had wanted to be a part of the team. So I had to fight that. And then the eye test too. So I always fought trying to break in and prove that I could win to Nick Scorich. Mm-hmm. The next guy that came in was Forrest Gregg. And Forrest Gregg at Green Bay, they ran the football. It was student body right, student body left. And that's basically it was established to run and everything else came off of it. But when Sam came, Sam was the first coach that understood everything I could do as a back. And unfortunately for me, I got hurt in 1979. I really believe if I had stayed healthy with Sam Rutigliano, I might be in camp.
So, Greg, you were talking about the Kardiac Kids, you know, your career already. You know, my brother decided to check up on some of your highlights, and we put together just a little bit of sound here. It's about 35 seconds worth of sound from a few touchdowns from back then. Let's take a listen to this. This brings back a lot of memories.
Okay.
These are from the 1980 season, Greg. So enjoy.
Cool. Yeah.
Pruitt heads for the corner. He's inside the flag, a touchdown. Greg Pruitt scoring for the Cleveland Browns. Before we can play more than a minute and a half here in the fourth quarter, a 12-yard touchdown pass.
They look to throw. Touchdown, Cleveland. What a catch. Greg Pruitt gets another one.
Sight. Touchdown, Greg Pruitt. And the Kardiac Kids have the hearts thumping again in Cleveland.
That audio is courtesy of the NFL and NBC.
What do you? I love that.
You know what I remember about that, Scott?
What's that?
It brings back a memory of we had this when Forrest and Sam was in. When I got hurt, they all of a sudden felt like they had to go out of their way to protect me. So I ended up being a receiver out of the backfield more so than run the ball. Anytime we got inside the red zone, they had what we call big backfield, and guys came in and they ran the ball in. So it was a lot of times I set up touchdowns, but I was not on the field when the touchdown was ran. So I was looking at my stats the other day when I only had like 3 rushing. I think I only had like maybe 9 rushing touchdowns that year. But if you look at my receiving yards, that's where I got most of my yards. We ran this option play, back versus a linebacker, and it was just no match. I got so cocky with it that I used to tell the linebacker, it's an option. You can't stop it.
And it's funny, when I was looking back at that 1980 season for some highlights, Craig, and there was a lot of receiving touchdowns you had that year.
Yeah.
Well,
I had 3 position changes. I was actually a quarterback in high school. Then I went to Oklahoma as a receiver. I switched to a running back at Oklahoma, and I came to Cleveland as a kick return, punt returner. I returned some punts at Oklahoma. In fact, I told people when I was in Oklahoma, I dropped a punt early in the season. They fired me. I wasn't good enough to run punts back for Oklahoma after that. So I come to the Browns and go to 4 Pro Bowls as a kick and punt return.
You had 5 receiving touchdowns that season, no rushing touchdowns, which was really surprising when you look at it. It's pretty mind-boggling knowing how the offense, knowing how your style would.
But if I didn't get it all the way in and I got it in the red zone, I was coming out.
Oh yeah,
it put somebody else in.
So I got excited there because I see the name Brian Sipe, or heard the name Brian Sipe, and that was one of my very first posters as a kid that I had. Which, quick story, I get married, I still have the Brian Sipe poster, and it's kind of half torn, and that was kind of one of the things that I had to get rid of because my wife's like, you got to get rid of this. But anyway, so Brian Sipe there, what kind of relationship did you have with him on the field as you became more of a receiver or running back as the team got better?
Well, I always joke and say, if you were going to pick a Sandlot football team, and you had about 10 guys there, it was 5 on each team, and Brian was one of the guys, he probably wouldn't get picked because he just didn't look the part of a football player. But Brian, his strength was he knew the game. Coming out of the huddle, he knew where he was going with the football. He wasn't fast with feet. He didn't have as strong as arm, but he was a patient quarterback. We run that option with the backside of the backfield till the defensive backs just got tired of us catching the ball in front of them. And the minute they would step up, he would throw over their head. His touchdown was maybe 30, 40 yards, but he was patient and he did that over and over again.
So I was looking this up, Greg. Your good buddy, former teammate in Browns fullback, Bo Scott, passed away in August of this year at 78. He played for the Browns, for our listeners who don't know, from 1969 to 74. Now, there's a funny story about you and Bo Scott when you were a rookie. Something about your handprint being permanently displayed on Bo's rear end.
We had this philosophy my rookie season that in preseason, a rookie went with a veteran. So Bo was the fullback, I was running back. So I went in with Bo in the preseason game. And I guess the first game, we're in the huddle and Bo looks over at me and he said, all right, settle down. You're going to be all right. Because I guess I was nervous. And he said, listen, if you just put your hand on my hip, don't turn it loose. He said, you're going to be all right. And he was right. So all these years later, even as we retired, the first time I saw him after we retired, he walked in one of the games and I walked up to him, hugged him, and I spin him around. He said, what you doing? I said, I'm trying to see if my handprint is still on your butt.
Oh, man, that is great. Now, when I look at clips of you and highlights, the ones that we just watched or listened to, the ones that I was watching earlier today, you were around before my time, but I, of course, always knew you from my brother and from my dad. Mm-hmm. But Greg, your style to me seems that it's very similar to like a Kareem Hunt or an Alvin Kamara or any other good pass catching running backs in the current NFL now. That said, I think your game would translate really well to today's NFL. Would you agree?
I agree with that. More of Hunt runs very physical. I wasn't real physical. I felt like I could get around a guy without being physical. Every now and then, I would fake a guy when I got him off balance. I put a shoulder on and make it look like I ran over, but I wasn't. And if I had to hit a hole and take on guys, but my first option to you was to get past you, and I felt like I did that better than trying to be real physical.
So what's the story about the tearaway jersey? You know, in 79, the NFL outlawed it, called it the Greg Pruitt rule. But what's the history behind that?
Well, they say that when the owners go to the off-season meetings, they don't do anything but party. And right at the end, just to justify the trip, they had to come up with something. So they came up with the Greg Pruitt rule. So I actually wore a tearaway jersey in college, but I didn't get it tore off like I did in the pros. And it got to a point where teams knew I was wearing a tearaway jersey. I remember playing the Dallas Cowboys. We took the field. We came through a tunnel together. And Bob Hayes walked up to me and pulled my jersey. He said, that tearaway jersey we've been reading about it. He grabbed it and told me. He said, oh, yeah, it is. So I made it to the field. I had to go put the jersey on. It was a distraction. It was 100% cotton, real thin, and it was designed to tear. Now, in Cleveland, when it gets cold, people don't go out in T-shirts. So I hated that jersey when it got cold. It was a distraction. When they tore my jersey off, they wouldn't. The defense got to a point where they would just tear my jersey if they thought I was going to be involved in that play. I thought that should be an unsportsmanlike conduct and a flag on the defense, but it wasn't. They would give me 30 seconds to go change my jersey, get in the huddle, get the play, and run the play. And so to me, it was a distraction. So when it left, I was not upset about it leaving.
So was the jersey just a regular jersey, just thinner material, or was it actually?
Yeah, it
like
was 100% kind of. Yeah, no, it was a thinner material, but you got 250, 300 pound people grabbing at it. So we used to, I used to take a pair of scissors and start a tear in the neck or start a tear on the sleeves, and that was enough when they grabbed it.
So you were like Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan.
Right.
All right, so we're going back in time here, you know, a little nostalgia and reliving your glory years, but this is going to be a little tough. Walk me through what you remember of Red Right 88. I know you were on the sidelines when it happened, but I mean, you had to feel somewhat hopeless, right?
Well, I ask you first, do you remember the movie with Burt Reynolds, The Longest Yard?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You remember that? You remember that at the end, it got in slow motion and he's running. Well, that's kind of what happened with us. We had a lot of packages, like I told you in red zone. We had a big backfield where the two big backs came in and they ran the tough yards. Well, in this game, we got the ball to the 15-yard line. They ran a 70 dig, which is a flag route to me. I caught the ball over a 15-yard line. So when I get up and come back, I'm being substituted by Cleo Miller and Mike Pruitt. So I know what's going on. We're on the 15-yard line. Don Cockcroft had missed two field goals. So they had discussed on the sideline which hash mark he wanted the ball to be on. So when the two guys came in, I thought they were positioning the ball to whatever hash mark he asked them to do it. So I go to the sideline and they have these heat benches. But in order for it heats your hands when you sit, but it doesn't do anything for your toes. You have to turn around and stick your toes in the slots, which puts your back to the field. So I put my toes in and I got my hands in them. And we actually over there talking about party. You know, when this is over, where we going to party and what kind of party time this going to be tonight. And when I said that, the guys kind of like, looked past me because my back was to the field. And when I turned, I saw what they saw. We all said at the same time, don't throw that ball. And he threw that ball and it was intercepted. And I had been cold. It was 38. It was 38 below that day until that moment. I wasn't cold no more. I was hot.
You played your first 9 seasons with the Browns, of course. You know, Scott wrote out those stats, leading the team in rushing and recording 1,000 yards 5 times. So shortly before that 82 season, you were traded to the LA Raiders. I think it was for an 11th round pick. Did that trade at that point in time surprise you? And were you upset about getting traded and leaving?
No, I was shocked. I didn't anticipate being traded. I didn't even know that was they were negotiating or thinking that. But I was at John Adams High School, and I was giving a speech to the students, and I was telling them how important education was, doing the right thing, because you never know what can happen to you. Then I was called to the principal's office I was put on the phone and Art Modell told me I had just been traded. So that's how I found out. Now,
so you got a call at an elementary school. Art Modell calls
John
you. You got to go to
high school.
Or high school. I'm sorry. Yeah. You got to go to the office to get the call. That's great.
Right.
Yeah, no cell phones back then.
No cell phone. Well, very few. Some people had them where you couldn't take them from the car. But so I had just decided at that point I was going to retire. But I had a very good relationship with the running back coach, Jim Garrett. And Jim kept calling me. I wouldn't answer the phone. I was playing softball in Cleveland Heights. And I went to a game one night. And in the middle of a game, some guy come out of the stands and walk onto the field. And I look up, it's Jim Garrett. He interrupts the game. He said, "I've been trying to call you, won't return my call." He said, so you're going to talk to me or I'm not going to let him start this game. I said, okay, coach, I'll talk to you when the game is over. He said, okay. So he waited. So when the game was over, I really was going to still try to get away. I went and got in my car, and he had parked his car bumper to bumper to my car. I couldn't get out. He said, so he lived in Cleveland Heights. He said, "I'm going to follow you to my house." He gave me his address. And when I went to his home, he picked up the phone, made a call, and put me on the phone, and it was Al Davis. So Al Davis is like a walking encyclopedia. He knew more about me and my career than I did. And he was telling me I was one of the pieces of the puzzle he was looking for. And he thought I could still play football and wanted me to come out. So I said, I agreed to go to the Raiders. Now, when I got reported to the Raiders, my first meeting was with Al. And Al told me that if the Browns was dumb enough to trade me for a conditional draft pick, he was going to give them a latest round draft pick he could give them. And he did. He ended, I think, 12 or 13 round pick he gave to him. That year, I didn't play a lot. The next year, I made all pro.
So, Greg, and we've asked other people this too, and I've always wondered this. Was there kind of like this aha moment in your career where you thought to yourself, all right, now I got to retire? You know, was there one moment in time, or was it one of those deals where there was an accumulation of injuries? What was that moment, or were there multiple moments?
The worst part of football for me was tour days, reporting to tour day camp, because we knew in a couple of days, I mean, you'd be so sore and so tired. It was just miserable. And so those were the time of year in the latter part of my career where it got more difficult to report to camp. And so when it happened to me, I was going into my 13th year. It was actually the same year that the NFL and the USFL was battling in courts, and they reduced the squad. They increased the squad number, the NFL did, to take guys off the street so they wouldn't be available for the USFL. That was another thing that Al Davis did, because Al Davis was a part of the AFL and the NFL, and they took the quarterbacks. I mean, they were a little better than the NFL. So he made sure that didn't happen to him since he was on the other side. And when they got a judgment and the USFL did not survive, they then reduced the numbers back to 43 to a 43-man squad. And I was called in. It was during almost 2 days, and I was dreading that first day or two to practice. And he called me in and told me that Cliff Branch, and they went by seniority. Cliff Branch had played like 13 years, wanted to play another year. They watched him, and so it was no way he could hide me out or hide anybody out. So actually, he did something good for me. When I went to the Raiders from the Browns, I flunked the physical. So Al called me in, and I had a problem with my back. I said, I've been had a problem with my back. It doesn't affect me from playing. It's just all the preparation that I have to do prior to the game to play. So he waived that, and when this came up, he reminded me that I had flunked the physical the 3 years earlier when I came there. So he said what he said about Cliff Branch, but what he was going to do for me is for me to file workman's comp, and he wouldn't contest it. So they gave me like $150,000, and I didn't have to go through 2 days. Wow. I wasn't real mad.
Wow. Just goes to show you how complicated the business of football or sports is when you really, stuff you don't think of when you're getting into it.
Well, there's a lot of things happen. I give you another scenario. You mentioned I had 3 1,000-yard seasons, and my best season was actually my year where I got 900. I think 900, and I was short by 50 yards or 35 yards, something like that. But it was the last year of my contract. So if I had got 1,000 yards, I would have gotten 1,000 yards 4 years straight, which would have been a great position to be in renegotiating your contract. Mm-hmm. So during the course of that year, there was a couple of times they pulled me out of the game. And I was mad because they were pulling me out because I knew what I was trying to do and how important that year was. And so, and I missed 3 games because I got hurt. So when I came back, we played the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. I need over 200 yards to get 1,000 yards. So they were pretty comfortable, and I was far enough away from it that I wasn't going to get it. So I go out, and Brian Sipe don't even play. That's how important the game is. He don't even play that game. It's the last game of the season. So in the first half, I got 185 yards. Now I'm real close to that 200 yards. I ended up with less than 1,000 yards. And then the first thing in my negotiation was, well, you didn't get 1,000 yards.
Oh, wow.
Greg, I'm looking at your...
I'm not saying they did it, but I'm saying there's a whole lot of coincidences there.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. That year you're talking about is 1978. You finished with 960 rushing yards.
Right.
I kind of like to play the hypothetical game sometimes here, but if they purposely tried to do that, do you think that would be or was an Art Modell move?
Well, I don't know if it was an Art Modell more so than the who would negotiate? What's the term? Negotiate?
The GM or
the GM. The GM. It would be sometimes the GM do that to impress. Yeah. That's his job to sign guys for a amount of money.
The reason why I ask about Art Modell is because we always heard stories about how cheap he was and a lot of different things with players and didn't want to give him a lot of money and obviously didn't do many upgrades at the stadium. So I don't know if he was that petty enough to not.
Well, I'm kind of catch-22 with Art because Art is who interceded the draft process, and he's the reason I was with the Browns. And even after I got traded to the Raiders, we actually played the Browns in a playoff game. And Art pulled me over to tell me he made a mistake. He had to do it all over again. He wouldn't have traded me. So I had a good relationship. And I was real, real close to his son. They, for whatever reason, every time we went on the road, they hung around with me. They always ran around with me.
That's cool. So one of those unique stats that I know my brother saw and I saw is that you threw 6 touchdown passes in your career. Do you remember those plays? Something maybe you didn't. I know you were quarterback in high school, but do you remember those in the NFL?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like I said, I was a high school quarterback. I remember one game in particular. We used to play the Bengals 3 times a year. People don't know. We played them in regular season at home and on the road, and we used to play them in Columbus, which was neutral ground, in a preseason game. So we knew a lot about each other. So, and I got to know a lot of those guys. So they had a defensive back named Lamar Parrish. Lamar Parrish, he ran his mouth from when the game started all the way to when the game stopped. So we were in a pregame warm-up. We had just played, I want to say, the New York Jets, and I had threw a touchdown pass in the game. And so he comes up in pregame and tells me, Greg, you throw that option pass today, it's going to be another touchdown. I'm going to run it back the other way. I said, okay, Lamar, thanks for the warning. So we had a wide receiver, I'm trying to think of his name, Gloucester Richardson. And so when you run the option pass, it's a sweep. So you don't want to show pass until at the very minute because you want to draw people up to stop the run. So I said, after Lamar warned me that he had been waiting on it, I told Gloucester, I said, Gloucester, this is going to be a real sloppy fake. I want to show pass right away because I want Lamar to know. I say, but on that option pass, the receiver runs a flag pattern. So we're going to run flag. You're going to take 2 steps of the flag, and you're going to go the other way. So they call a play. I drop my hand. I see Lamar running the flag pattern better than Gloucester's running the flag pattern. but Gloucester ain't there because we had changed the play. And all I could hear was him curse. I can't say it on TV. He screamed it out loud, and we got a touchdown in there.
Oh, that's good stuff right there. Well, let's talk about actually one more question, because I always, in my basement, I have pictures of the old stadium. And every time I look at those pictures, I remember going to Browns games and Indians games. And, you know, it has a special place in Browns Indians fans because it was around. It was just, nowadays you look at it and it's kind of a dump, to be honest with you. But what any unusual stories about the old stadium, playing or going through the place?
Well, I'll tell you a true story. My rookie season, we played the Steelers. They didn't tell me how much they hated the Steelers. I didn't know it was that big of a rivalry. If they said Oklahoma, Texas, or Oklahoma State, I would have got it. But Leroy Kelly was starting, so it was Leroy Kelly's problem. Well, the week before Leroy had sprained his ankle, he played anyway. He tried to play, and a couple of times he would have to come out of the game. And sometimes they show this as a highlight with Mike Phipps, the great escape, where he misses all these Steelers, and then he comes out and he throws a pass. But the pass he throws it to me. I take the ball down to like the 18-yard line. It's at the end of the game, we got maybe one more possession with the ball. We don't get it done, we're going to lose that game. So we run a sweep to the left with Gene Hickerson, and I just get in, and we win the game. So when we win the game, the people hit the field like we had just won the Super Bowl. And now I'm a rookie, the lights coming on. Dang, you know, this is huge. And I'm the one that ran the touchdown. So my first thing was I was going to be on TV. So in the old stadium, Scott, this is why you remind me, in the old stadium, we shared it with the Indians. And so we took the field through the baseball dugouts.
Right.
And so all these people are all over the field. They patting you on your shoulder pads and your helmet. I tell people, I say, listen, you got 5 or 6 people patting you on your helmet. That's cool. When you got like 1,000, that's a beat down. So I'm panicking and I'm trying to get off the field, and I look up and I see the dugout. So I run over to the dugout. When I get to the dugout, I'm watching them rock the goalpost, trying to pull the goalpost down. And I'm saying, this is huge. So now I'm starting to ask myself questions I think the reporters are going to ask. So I already have my answers. I sound decent. So after I rehearsed a little bit, I'll go down through the dugout, up the tunnel, and I go busting into the locker room. I'm in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room.
Uh-oh.
I went in the wrong locker room. That's a true story. And I can tell you, they were not happy camps. So I got out of there. I had to go back, wait in the dugout, and then run across the field.
Oh, man. Can you imagine if that happened nowadays? That'd be all over social media.
Yeah.
You know, rookie goes in the wrong locker room.
How were the facilities back in the 70s in the old stadium?
Terrible.
You didn't hesitate a bit there.
Not like what they got down there now. Yeah.
Well, Greg, before we wrap this up, we do this little section, this little segment called like rapid fire, where Scott and I will throw little questions at you, some football related, some not football related, and just have some fun with it. So we're some of these we've already got a little topic of, but your favorite Browns memory during your playing days. I know you mentioned some of them, but one that you haven't mentioned so far. Go for it.
One that I haven't mentioned. Well, one of the memories is when I'm from Houston, Texas, and the guys couldn't believe that when we played the Houston Oilers for the first time, that I had never been in the Amsterdam. And I hadn't. And so it was an opportunity for my folks not to see me on TV, but to see me in person. So that was a great memory for me.
What's your favorite NFL stadium to play in?
Believe it or not, the Astrodome.
Okay.
One of the worst fields, but it was one of the fastest fields in football.
Favorite food and pregame meal?
I didn't eat a lot because I eggs probably, eggs and probably nothing else. Eggs.
So what's your favorite? I know you're hunting right now and it's hunting season, but when you have more downtime and the weather gets colder, what's your favorite TV show? Are you watching something on streaming or over the air TV?
Gunsmoke.
Really?
I've seen every episode about 1,000 times. Half if I seen Gunsmoke today.
Wow.
I have.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, if there's 1,000 TV shows, that's one I would have said, no, there's no way. Gunsmoke. All right.
Yeah,
Gunsmoke.
I'm with you on that one, Scott. We kind of touched a little bit on this with the business and journalism, but if you didn't play in the NFL, what career or job would you have picked? Would it have been something in business then?
If I had a choice in journalism, you mean?
Or in business?
This business, no, my biggest regret is I didn't go into coaching. I had an opportunity, and actually the Raiders hired me as a scout. They wanted me to scout the Browns because the Browns was on their schedule. So I scouted everybody else for them. But I didn't stay with it. But if I had known the kind of money they paying guys today, I should have been in coaching.
Was there one team or one opposing defense you look forward to play the most each season? You looked at the schedule. Boy, that's the one I look forward to. Is there one?
Well, I like the AFC North. And when I played, it was AFC Central. Mm-hmm. So I enjoyed playing. And I think when I played, that was the toughest division to play in. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed playing Pittsburgh and the Steel Curtain and the Bengals because everybody else hated to play.
Obviously, you still follow the Browns now.
Yep.
Who are your favorite current Browns players?
Nick Chubb. I like Nick Chubb. I can't help it. As a running back, I watch the game. I gravitate to the running back position, and I become him. I try to see what he sees, and from watching it on TV and getting a replay, I can say whether he made a good turn or a bad turn or a good run, or he should have got more out of it, or he shouldn't. But I'm just amazed, having been a running back myself, how the great running backs tell you, and in the course of a game, you can feel the pulse of the defense. You know the speed of the defense. You know who the best play to call and who's dominating from an offensive line standpoint. When to be very aggressive on a play and when not to. It takes carries. It takes being in the game to learn all of that. And I'm just amazed how Nick Chubb, he sits over there. He seems not to do nothing, talk to nobody. And he's so consistent. I was telling somebody today, he's like George Gervin for the San Antonio Spurs. You know, you watch George Gervin and he's so smooth. And at the end of the game, they say he shot 48 points. Where did he shoot 48 points from? And you look at Nick Chubb Sunday, he ain't hardly in the game. They say he got 100 yards. I'm telling you, it is hard to get 100 yards in the NFL.
Yeah, he makes it look too easy. Good reference there with the Iceman. I like that.
So we're deep into October. You know, we have a kind of a decent read on what the Browns, the Browns so far. How do you think they finish? What's your biggest concerns?
My biggest concern is how lucky we're going to get in terms of injuries. And if we can be fortunate enough not to get some key people injured that we have to play without, I think if the Browns do two things, they don't shoot themselves in the foot and they don't get key people hurt, we can win the division. And if you win the division, you're not in the playoffs. That gets you closer to the Super Bowl.
Injuries are key, that's for sure.
Yeah. Greg, we want to thank you very much for joining us here. I mean, we'd love to hear the old stories, especially that story about you running into the wrong locker room. That is just classic. I can't even imagine the look on your face when you ran into that locker.
You should have taken the look on their face.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
it's great catching up with you. I know I'll see you around as well. And I don't know if we'll have a chance this fall, but I'd love to play golf with you sometime, especially when the weather gets better, maybe next year.
Okay. Well, you still got time this year.
That's true, as long as the weather holds up.
Yeah. Well, we still got Indian summer. I always say, whenever it gets cold, we're going to get a break. It always happens.
There you go.
That'd be great. Greg, it was great talking to you. Thanks so much for your time. And I'm sure one of these days when I'm up in town, if we're all together, I'll have to crash your guys' party here on the golf course.
All right. And don't give up on me on the Ducks.
You know what? Speaking of the Ducks, let me show you this on the cam here. Our listeners won't be able to see it.
Yeah. You rubbing it in.
I'm showing a picture of some of the ducks that we got on our duck hunting trip. So it was great. We'll have to get you up there sometime, man. It's a good time.
Okay. Appreciate
Greg,
you guys.
You got it, Greg. Thanks again. Have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Later. Go Browns.
You know, Scott, when we set this interview up with Greg Pruitt, I knew we obviously would be talking about Cleveland Browns, his playing days. I never thought the first thing out of the gate would be him talking about hunting and fishing and how he likes to go deer and turkey hunting.
I know. And also looking at his basement there and him loving the outdoors, and he plays a lot of golf. I mean, he's enjoying life, and that's what you got to do.
You got to do that. And I know you listeners out there couldn't see his basement, but behind him, he just had a couple trophies and some other, personal memorabilia that he had over the years. It had a Greg Pruitt jersey in the back. And, any young fans out there for the Browns, definitely look him up, look up his videos on YouTube, like I did on some of those highlights. And I'm telling you, he has a Kareem Hunt / Alvin Kamara style to him. And, like I told him, Scott, I think he would thrive in today's NFL being a great pass catching running back.
No question. And he was a punt returner too. Mm-hmm. He was a quarterback in high school. He was kind of a jack of all trades. I love the story. And there was a lot of stories there, but about him trying to warm himself up during Red Right 88. So he wasn't really looking up because he was trying to warm up, and then he turns around. Oh, they were talking about what they're going to do after they win. And then everything just went downhill real quick.
And I think the other thing too is people don't realize how great of a college running back he was at Oklahoma. Yes. Came in second and third place in Heisman voting in his 2 of his 3 years there. And then of course was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, which was really cool too. And that fans still send him, fan mail to this day. I find that fascinating. Because,
right when he turned 70, he goes, you know what? Why am I getting all this stuff? Is there something going on here? You never know. Maybe there was something out there floating around that, like you said, he wasn't aware of. So he's a really down to earth guy. I've met him many, many times, and just an approachable guy, just talking with him and seeing him walk into a room, you wouldn't know that he's an NFL player because he just doesn't carry himself like you think about these inflated ego type of athletes that everyone talks about. He's just a down to earth guy. He minds his own business, and he loves to talk football, but he doesn't have that aura. He's just one of the guys. And when you look at him, I know he's 70 now, but you can tell the guy has been around, and he has stories beyond stories. And as we have evolved here on this podcast, the more and more you talk to these former professional athletes, the more stories evolve. And some of these guys will have back on, in the months down the road here, because there's much more we can always get into. But that man right there, you could tell, Scott, we were just scratching the surface with him. Oh yeah. And I've shook his hand before, and his hands, it's like, what you just, his hands will swallow up my hand. I don't have big hands, but still he's something special. He really is.
Well, Greg Pruitt, we want to thank you again for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it. I hope you, the listeners out there, appreciate it as well. And thank you for listening and subscribing. Remember, you can find our podcast, Sabol Brothers, on the Baseline Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, on Spotify and Apple, all right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Scotty, it was a great one. We'll do another one here coming up soon.
We will. Looking forward to it, John. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.